Hey everybody, hope you're doing okay. Let's make a brick oven style veggie pizza in my apartment kitchen oven. Now obviously I don't have a brick oven, but we're going to do something special. We have 2 cups of bread flour, 1 cup of water about 105, 110 degrees to proof the active dry yeast, and about a teaspoon and a quarter teaspoon and a half, about half a package of active dry yeast. Optionally, some habanero chopped, cornmeal, rosemary and thyme, coconut oil with veggie bacon. Not shown here are honey and soy sauce, which we're going to use to cook the veggie bacon. And I'm just showing you what I used here, so if you have different meat replacement, feel free to prepare that and use it the way you want to. We have tomato, bell pepper, mushroom, cilantro, a few cloves of garlic. We're going to crush those, put them in the olive oil, thinly sliced onion, olive oil. I have some real Parmesan cheese here. Yours doesn't have to be real. You can choose what you want here. Mozzarella. I have some vegan mozzarella there. Tomato sauce. Thinly sliced olives. Parchment paper that's safe for the oven. Okay, we're going to start off at a medium heat here in a seasoned skillet, or any skillet you have should be fine. I'm going to throw in the coconut oil and the veggie bacon. We're going to get that going. And I flip it over here, before it gets too brown, just to kind of get both sides cooking evenly. You can see it's a little brown there. And now we're going to drizzle the veggie bacon with some goodness here. We got some honey. And we're going to spread it all around with the spoon. And we're going to check to see when they're golden brown on both sides. When we see that non-honey side is kind of golden brown, we're going to give the honey side a quick flip to the bottom of the pan and then back over. And as a final step, we're going to drizzle the veggie bacon with soy sauce. Going to give it one flip and take it right on out. You don't want to go too long on this step because the soy sauce will overcook. And now let's turn those strips into little veggie bacon bits. And now we're going to just put these aside for later when we're topping the pizza. We should have water that's about 105, 110 degrees. We take our teaspoon and a half, teaspoon and a quarter, half a package of active dry yeast, put it into the water, and then just make sure that it's really mixed well, no clumping. So we're going to add about a half a teaspoon of sugar to the yeast, and we'll set it aside. So we're going to combine and crush rosemary, thyme, about a half teaspoon of salt, about a half tablespoon of garlic powder, give or take, depending on your taste. All this is kind of optional and you can play with it. I'm using a mortar and pestle here. I'm also going to show an example here of using a coffee grinder. You don't need either of these. You can actually use, spoons and things in the kitchen to combine and grind ingredients. The key point is to grind these together and add them here to the flour. Then stir it all together and kind of mix it. And you're preparing it basically. We're going to add the water to this. I'm going to show how to mix this with a spoon handle as well as a food processor. Use whatever you have. Now the yeast should have been sitting for at least 5 minutes and it should have that foamy top. And as you can see, I mixed it up and I'm just going to pour it into the flour there. And then I'm going to mix it for about 10 minutes or so until it is very smooth and soft. It shouldn't be sticky. And here's an example of how I do this with the food processor. With either the bowl or the food processor, if you feel it's sticky after you're mixing it for a couple minutes or so, you can go ahead and add a little bit more flour to it. Don't add too much flour. You don't want it to become dry and crumbly. You want it to be nice and smooth. After you finish mixing it, whether you use a bowl manually or a food processor or an electronic mixer, put it out on the cutting board and fold it over as you see I'm doing right here. And I'm going to keep on folding it and kneading it as you see that I'm doing here over and over again, adding a little bit of flour if I sense that it's too moist and too sticky. And I'm just going to repeat that for a little while until I get a really nice smooth ball. Now a little tip here is that if you go and find a lot of very simple, the simplest you can find bread recipes, they all have similar approaches with yeast and with kneading. And if you just look at a lot of those, you'll kind of get a feeling for the pattern of how breads are made. Yes, the recipes will have differences, but I find it's a great way to get the gist, the feel for how to work with bread. I'm going to use a little bit of flour in the bowl here. I find that's enough to keep it from sticking, but you can use a little oil. Some people like to use oil. And this plastic wrap has a little bit of olive oil on the bottom to keep it from sticking, and then I cover it with a damp cloth. And this is all loosely covered. Now I'm going to let it sit for anywhere from like an hour to several hours, depending on the temperature. I want to wait to see it reach the top there in this particular bowl. Your bowl size may vary, so things may vary for you. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is push down the dough and turn it into another ball here, and then I'm going to put it out on the table and work with it a little bit more. So I'm going to push it down and remove it from the edges, and just work with it slowly to remove it from the edges. Then I'm going to put it out here on the cutting board. I actually have some parchment paper there with some flour. It just helps manage the mess. And then I'm just going to fold it over and turn it and fold it over, as you see that I'm doing here. And my goal is to end up with another soft ball. And voila! And this is enough for 2 pizzas, so I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to store the other half, the one that we don't use, in a bag in the fridge. Now we're going to prepare the pizza while it is on parchment paper, because when we transport it to the oven, we want it to stay intact and we don't want to really be lifting it up a lot after we prepare it. Now you're probably like, what the heck is that? Well, I don't have a rolling pin, so I just use an old wine bottle with some plastic wrap. And I've been using this one bottle for more than a year now, and it's worked fine for me, and so I just keep using it. But if you have a rolling pin, then that's wonderful, and use a rolling pin. Now you've seen me here draping the pizza. That's my way of using gravity to help me elongate the dough. And then you'll see me lying it out flat, using a little bit of flour now and then going back to my homemade rolling pin. Pizza doesn't have to be paper thin, but I would say something less than 1/4 of an inch thick. Now I'm going to fold back both sides, and I'm going to sprinkle some cornmeal. And the pizzerias that I've enjoyed the most, they have this cornmeal on the bottom, and it just adds a little bit of a texture to it and a little bit of a flavor. Now when I lay the dough back out flat, you'll see me being gentle. That's because I don't want the cornmeal to puncture through the dough. If it snuggles close to the dough, that's perfect. And coming up here, you'll see me use the rolling pin. It's very gentle, very gentle. With the oven preheated to 400 degrees, we're going to pre-bake the dough for about 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, when the pre-baking is complete, we're going to take this crust out of the oven. You'll see it'll have some bubbles. That's totally normal. In fact, that's what we want. And we can use a little knife there to flatten out some of the bigger bubbles. But we don't have to flatten them all out, just enough to give it that flattened texture. Now, either while the dough is pre-baking or even now is fine, we're going to crush the garlic into the olive oil. This is going to result in sort of a faux sort of butter type of combination. I use this for a lot of things. I put it on toast. We're going to use it here on the pizza dough. Now, ideally, you would have a brush for this. Now, I don't have a brush here, so I use a spoon. And I'm actually surprised. A spoon works quite well to scoop around and move around the little pockets of oil. And the crust with the pre-baking actually retains that oil and doesn't absorb it too quickly if I move fast enough with the spoon. And once you're finished, you should end up with this beautiful, glistening, garlicky top, and you'll see that it kind of retains the oil. It doesn't soak in right away. Now I'm going to add the chopped habanero. Now if habanero is too hot for you, you can use cayenne or red pepper or nothing. It's your choice. Next I'm going to add the tomato sauce, and you can pretty much use any old sauce that you prefer. I very often use my mom's sauce, and I'll link to that recipe below and in the little click thing up above. And as with the garlic and oil, a spoon works nicely. Yay! And now it's time for the toppings. And I have an order I like to use here, which is going with these onions first and let them blend in there with the tomato sauce. And then we got the other wet ingredient, which is the olives. And we're getting those tomatoes on right now. It's another wet ingredient there. And I just kind of like to do it in that order. You can use the order you like, or use this order. Sometimes vegan cheese, the shredded kind especially, comes a little dry, and I like the cheese to have a little bit more moisture and oil, so I flavor it up with our garlic oil. And then mix it up, and then I use this cheese to top the pizza with. Now, I had a slight ordering mistake up here. I was actually supposed to put the veggie bacon bits on first right now, and then top those with the cheese. So I stopped midway through adding the cheese, and then I go and add these veggie bacon bits that we created. And the way I fix an error like that is I just make sure the little bacon bits are snug in the cheese and maybe covered up there a little with that existing cheese. And now I'm going to really fix the error by going over everything with a good amount of cheese. And then I'm going to finish off here with some real Parmesan cheese, and you can use something else or skip that step. Okay, we're going to get this into a 400-degree oven. Now I'm a little bit of a helicopter parent when it comes to monitoring this, so I'll set the timer very early, like 8 minutes. I know it's not going to be ready, but it'll allow me to check on it. And it's also just a reminder in case I get distracted. And so I'll keep going back and checking over and over until I see it getting just a little bit brown on the crust. And now comes a very important step. I turn off the oven and I turn the broiler on high. And I don't move away from the oven. I stay there and I check on it like every 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And what I'm looking for is to see when that crust just starts to get blackened, when it starts to enter that stage. And that's the time when I take it out. There we go. That's it right there. Take a close look there in the front. You can see the blackened. And now it's time to come on out. So you take that pizza out. I use great care here and be very careful, as I'm taking this out, of course. And really I should be using the oven mitts. I don't recommend doing it this particular way, but it's just something I'm used to, so that's how I do it. And voila! C'est magnifique! Now there's one step I forgot here to do before slicing the pizza, and that's to sprinkle the cilantro, or if you have basil, right on top. So I didn't do that. It's really nice when you do it right away because it sort of steams and it kind of, goes and melts down into the pizza. But I added a little bit afterwards, and that's fine too. Now I've got to say, if you sprinkle a little bit of salt on top, it really, really adds a little zing to it, and you can't go wrong there if salt is your thing. And with that said, I'll tell you, this is fantastic without the salt. Oh, very good. Oh, and that veggie bacon with the honey, it's very good. This came out quite good. All right, everybody, that's it. Until the next video, take care. All right, thanks. Bye.